Good evening from Rocky Mountain PBS. I'm Cynthia Hessen. This is Colorado State of Mind. We're taping tonight at the History Colorado Center, where an audience has gathered to watch the first presidential debate. That has just finished, and we are about to talk to 5 distinguished Coloradans now, 4 former elected officials and a distinguished historian. Dick Lamm is a former 3-term governor of Colorado. And next to him is former U.S. Senator Hank Brown, and the two of them established the University of Denver's Public Policy Institute. We also have with us 2 former lieutenant governors of Colorado, Jane Norton and also Gail Shetler. Jane served in the administration of Bill Owens, Gail Shetler in the last part of the administration of Roy Romer. And then also with us from the Center of the American West at the University of Colorado, Patricia Limerick. And Professor, I think we'll start by saying this is definitely an evening that everyone will remember in Denver and Colorado.
I think so. I asked myself at the start, will there be any indication that these 2 gentlemen know that they're in Colorado and in the West? And I think we could all arrive at a judgment of unanimity on that. There didn't seem to be. They spoke of energy. They made no indication that they knew that was a particular issue here. I feel some sorrow over that on both of their behalf, I think, because this is a remarkable place to be having a debate. And I want to make just a few points about that. The West has a very complicated, very unsettled political alignment, partisan political alignment. The pattern for a century in the West has been more pragmatism than partisan affiliation. So that's a nice opportunity to notice that, especially if you want to appeal to someone who's not in your particular partisan unit. We are 1/3 Republicans, 1/3 Democrats, 1/3 some other category in this state. That's interesting. I'm neutral in many of these things, but I hope that's part of the future. I hope that range of affiliations in the state of Colorado is a sign of where we might be going as a nation. We have senators and congressmen of great national impact. People spoke of the Bowles-Simpson plan. Not a word was said about what an extraordinary national and regional resource Senator Alan Simpson is. I think I might have wanted to quote Alan Simpson if I were one of those fellows and make a reference to that. In 2008, with the Democratic National Convention here, there was, I think, some degree of national awakening to say, oh, that West, that flyover area, there are citizens there. Who knew that? There are voters and citizens and some electoral votes. So that is a start in an awakening. I hope it's, again, more than just, oh, we noticed the West and we will come to Colorado frequently on campaigns, but we might actually learn something from the West and adopt some of our ideas there. The federal presence in the West with public lands is a national heritage in which Republican congressmen have played big roles in wilderness designation in Western locations. So it's just an interesting scrambling of some of the categories of partisan identification here. So, and then finally, well, actually 2 last points, our governor and this panel and our congeniality and the fact that I'm not going to try to rank this in fondness, but I'm equally fond, I think, of all of the 4 people up here with me, and would consider a conversation with each of them a chance to think more about my own ideas and to have those illuminated. So I think the state of Colorado actually does offer some examples to the nation of how we might have different positions and actually enrich and illuminate our own thinking by that. So those are my thoughts. And then the final one is that the West does stand for a fresh start. The format of the debate did not have a fresh start tonight, in my judgment. At first, I was very happy. I thought, oh, nice, it will be looser, it'll be freer. But, oh, poor Jim Lehrer. I wept for him. I would have wept for him if I had more time. I'd go home and weep for him. But I think it might have been his fault, because he chose to accent differences. At the very end, he came around to working with people from other parties, but it wasn't till the end. And his accent on differences, I think he got what he asked for by people who simply would pay no attention to him. I had a moment where I thought, I will vote for the man who is kind to Jim Lehrer. That man will get my vote, who says, oh, Jim has a hard job here, and I'm just going to try to help him out a little bit. But
no, these are 2 men who are not accustomed to being moderated.
That seemed to be the case. So those are my opening thoughts.
All right, very good opening thoughts. Let me get something from each of you. Your in general impression of the debate. Governor Lamm, will you start?
Well, this is going to be a change of tone from what Patty said, but
All right.
I scored the debate. I think the best debater was definitely Romney. I think the most at ease was Romney. The most likable, while being also the most aggressive, was Romney. The most honest answers were Obama, and the worst performance of the evening was Jim Lehrer.
Oh,
He was
all right.
not a good moderator.
No, I'm with you.
Gail Shetler, do you agree with some of that or have your own impressions to tell us about here?
Well, Governor Lamb and I have agreed and disagreed for a very long time, and I actually don't really agree with that, but I'm going to take a slightly different point of view. I don't think that they were in the West to talk about the West, unfortunately,
No.
Patty. I think they were simply using this as an opportunity to say what they have been programmed to say. So when you're in politics, one of the things you do is you stay on message, and boy did they stay on message. So in some respects, it was kind of boring because they so stayed on message that there wasn't anything new or anything unexpected that they were saying. So I thought they both did a good job. I thought that the president was more relaxed than Romney. I thought he was very programmed, but they were both programmed, and they both were just focused on the message.
Hank Brown, do you agree with that?
Clearly, two capable debaters came tonight, and I thought the debate was helpful in terms of spelling out differences. It seemed to me that Governor Romney was a little better prepared, or quite a bit better prepared, and the president, unfortunately, made a number of simply inaccurate statements. I counted over a dozen documentably false statements that the president made. Let me give you an example. He said in the jobs part that his proposals will reduce the deficit. His own budget that he introduced to Congress, so it's a copy of it is available, gives you a higher deficit at the end of his 10-year period than we have now. He doesn't reduce the deficit according to his own plan, he increases it. He simply got that wrong. He claimed Romney's plan is a tax cut for the wealthy. That's inaccurate, it's false. He said it a number of times. Romney made it clear that that's not his plan, but he went ahead with it anyway. There were a series, well, there are 10 others that are clearly documentably false. But I think what you'll see is the president make an effort to prepare better for the second debate. This one, I think, will clearly see Romney gain in the polls as a result.
Jane Norton, what is your impression?
Well, I thought Governor Romney clearly won the debate. I think both of them were credible, but as we listened to Governor Romney, I thought he was well prepared, he was specific. In my mind, he was aggressive without being rude. He spent a lot of time going through and correcting the president on mischaracterizations of his opinions, and I thought the president sounded defensive. I thought on a number of different indications he was being quite defensive. So all in all, I thought Romney was much stronger.
All right, interesting, because you're, except for Gail Shetler perhaps, you're
I don't agree. No.
All right, go ahead and say why.
I think it's very easy to say that that the president had lots of misinformation. I think you could say that about Governor Romney too. And one of the things that they both said was, what they were both constantly doing was correcting the other one. So I don't agree that there was lots of misrepresentation or misinformation. What they were saying was basically what they've been saying all along. And I don't think that this was a lopsided debate at all. I do think that they both came out looking pretty good, and I think that this was Romney's to win, and I don't really think he did.
Let me respectfully disagree. The 12 that I mentioned are very clear statements, and the documentation that the statements were false is very clear as well. For example, the president indicated that Romney's tax plan was the same as had been suggested in 2001 and 2002. That is absolutely inaccurate, and all you have to do is look at the two tax plans to compare it. If you look at a wide range of other ones, clearly the president simply had his facts mixed up, and it's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of fact.
No.
These are all documentable.
I don't agree with that at all. And I can raise the
Show me where the facts are
I can
different.
raise the $716 billion cut from Medicare, which is absolutely false. I mean, I don't want to get into that. I'd much rather talk about more important issues than whether we agree on what their facts were.
But Gail, wouldn't you say that clearly he spent a lot of time, the president spent a lot of time defending why he has to keep the tax rates high? I mean, I thought the first segment was this is why we have to keep tax rates high.
No,
Yes,
are you going?
I guess I would say, as a professor, if they were both my students, they wouldn't be writing home with pride about their grade from that. They did not engage in a exchange that was not edifying. But what I think is, first of all, of course, the president would be defensive because he has a record and he has to defend it, and a challenger is in a jollier situation.
But but his posture, I felt, was defensive. I think he could have defended his record, but the stagnant economy is a hard record to defend.
And that's where my 2 points would be that there are any number of issues that came up that require thoughtful reflection and consideration of options. That is not a format that allows anybody to do that. And attached to that is that so much of the premise is, when I'm president, I'm going to do such and so, or when I was president, I should have. Well, presidents, thank heaven, have limited powers under the Constitution. So some of the things, I will repeal this or that my first day or my last day or whatever, that's not, thank heavens, that's not in the Constitution. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I think you can see it most clearly on what really everybody of every party cares about. I think, well, it's hard to tell exactly what they're caring about, but deficit reduction is really important. And it has to be a Bowles-Simpson compromise. It has to be raise taxes and cut spendings. And it just looked to me like a very dug-in deadlock on that. That was what was making it a kind of fruitless conversation. And in that case, I do think the Democrats and the Republicans, neither of those men representing their parties lifted my spirits on that, because they referred to Bowles-Simpson and they said what, of course, is a silly thing to say. There are parts of it we like, or that's not what a compromise is. Not Bowles and Simpson worked very hard to have a compromise, and to say I'd like Bowles-Simpson but I don't like all of it is to say I'm not buying the compromise. So I think that that's the bedrock of the problem here, that in terms of really telling us, I think it's probably much more about manner and style. And I just want to say that, and then I will be quiet for minutes and minutes, but that was not an automaton. I don't know where that characterization came from. Watching Romney, that his eyes are bright, he's interactive, so I think that was a great demonstration that automaton characterization needs some rethinking. But in terms of citizens really being able to say, well, yes, I need to think about that, heard ideas. I'm not sure this is the framework where that could happen.
Well, I think the president had one great advantage going on, is his likability was significantly better than his job approval rate. And I frankly think he probably lost that tonight. I think that Romney came there more at ease, more prepared, more enthusiastic, and frankly more likable. And I think that was a real blow to the Obama campaign.
Were you surprised by that?
Let me also, however, say to Hank, there was just as many misstatements that Romney made. This idea that we can all of a sudden get no pre-existing conditions and keep young people on parents' policies and not have a mandate. And as Patty said, on the balancing of the budget, it's just, you ought to be honest with the American people. It's going to take pain. It's going to take additional taxes.
Yes. I would like to raise something that I wish they talked about, and that is women. And obviously women, there's a huge gender gap in this race right now in favor of Obama. And for Colorado women, for all women, this is a very important election, because healthcare, and I know you want to talk about that, Cynthia, so I'd like to move there. Healthcare is a very critical part of the discussion right now. For women, healthcare is an economic issue. It's an economic issue because without Obamacare, women will not have access to preventive services. So many women won't. So for example, if I am a poor mom and I'm trying to feed my kids, do I spend my $50 on food for my kids, or do I spend it to go get the mammogram that I think I might need? Women now are going to have access to preventive care. That is a huge, huge economic issue for women. They're also going to have coverage for pre-existing conditions. And thirdly, women are going to be paying the same amount as men pay. There's been this big gap. Women have paid so much more than men for health care insurance. So this is a very big economic issue for women. I'm sorry they didn't even mention women in the debate. So I just wanted to raise it because I'm a woman and I care a whole lot about women and health care and economic issues for women. And I'm hoping it will come up the next time.
May I just say that as a woman on the panel, that however, that Obamacare, when fully implemented, as Governor Romney said tonight, will increase premiums. They will be doubled by $2,500. They will go up another $2,500. And he is not saying that you can't have mammograms and things like that. He's saying do it in the private market.
If you can afford it.
But that's not the way it will work. One of the things that I was so pleased with, as he talked about, that I thought really resonated with me, is because we are such a divisive country, that the governor talked about how he reached across the aisle in Massachusetts and got it done through a bipartisan approach, rather than the way the president did it with Obamacare. And I think that's a huge issue for people. They were shut out of the process during Obamacare.
They didn't want to be part of the process.
Let me, if I may, emphasize a point that the governor made. I think both of them were not frank with us in terms of the deficit problem that we face. We are not going to be able to afford the military as much as we might like to. We're going to have to make cuts. President Obama, I got his exact words, indicated that the basic structure of Social Security is sound and we only need to tweak it. That's absolutely, clearly, totally false. You have a disaster waiting you in Social Security, and you have to make difficult decisions. So the deficit problem probably is much more challenging than either candidate talked about tonight.
You know, Romney, I mean, the president tried everything he could. He adopted Romney's plan in Massachusetts to try to get a bipartisan, because it is a point that he didn't have a bipartisan group. All the great legislation, Social Security, Medicare, all of these have had bipartisan. But I don't think that's the president's fault. He reached out, he waited 6 important months trying to get a bipartisan cooperation. He funded his plan with the idea that the previous Republican president had, McCain's idea of the Cadillac tax on premiums. So he tried every way he could to come up with a plan that would be a bipartisan plan, and he met a stone wall.
Let me respond to that, because I would take issue with that. You can applaud with, but that's not the case. The key factor here is whether or not we provide help for people who need health care. I think most Republicans and most Democrats agree that's something we ought to do. If people can't afford health care, we ought to be concerned about it, and we ought to help them out. The key difference is this has a government takeover that sets rules for the entire system. It doesn't focus on helping the poor. It puts everyone under the same system. And if you do that, what you do is have a government plan to control people's health care who can afford to pay for it and should afford to pay for it. So the difference is this. It's not about whether you help the poor or not. It's whether or not you have government domination of the industry. And that is not a bipartisan issue. If he'd given up on the effort to control all of it, he would have quickly, I think, found Republicans that would have gone along.
As I recall, if you look at the VA system, Medicare and Medicaid, that's 2/3 of healthcare in this country. So it's not as though this is something new. Government is not about to dominate healthcare for those people who want to have private insurance. And in fact, the exchanges are going to have private insurance companies, and you can go on the exchange and choose. And if you can afford it, you can choose what you want. So we have a healthcare system in this country that is 2/3 a government healthcare system. But the other 1/3 of people are often shut out of the healthcare system altogether. And that's what this is trying to address.
I thought you just got through talking about all the people who didn't have insurance. And now you're saying 2/3 of it, and it's true. I don't know if it's quite 2/3. But we do have a series of programs that are focused on helping the poor. And if we designed a program to fill in the gaps for the poor and those who can't afford the proper treatment, you'd have had strong bipartisan support.
Unemployment is something they talked about as well. You've said that you feel as though they stayed pretty much on the message that we've been hearing from each of them. Would you say that it is true about what they're talking about in terms of getting jobs?
Yes, I think they've both been talking. I think the president has had more specifics on what he would do to stimulate jobs. And, you know, it's really easy to say that the president has failed, because we all know, we all wish the economy were really thriving, which it isn't. But the reality is, under President Obama, we've gone from losing 700,000 jobs in a month to gaining 5 million private sector jobs. The biggest job losses have been coming in government, and that's because governments at all levels are cutting back. So I think they stayed on message, and I don't feel like they said anything particularly new.
Jane, do you agree?
I'm just amazed at that, actually, because I'm trying to match the rhetoric with the reality of what we're seeing. We saw a president who, as a candidate 4 years ago, said, let's pass the stimulus, $787 billion, and we will not see unemployment go above 8%. We all know that it hasn't gone under 8% in the last 43 months. In fact, it bounced above 10% for a while. So the rhetoric about jobs, he's saying we'll create how many million green jobs as a candidate, 5 million green jobs. I was excited about that as a Coloradan, but actually we've only created 5,000 green jobs. So again, the reality is not matching the rhetoric, and I think for me, he did not have specifics at all about how he would create jobs. Then you had candidate Romney talk about his 5 points plans. He talked about oil and gas, the war on coal, which is a huge issue for those of us in the West, and getting it affordable energy. And those are the things that I think are going to resonate with the middle class. I think that gas was $1.80 when we elected Barack Obama. It's $3.80 right now. Our grocery...
And our dependence on foreign oil is way down, and our domestic production is way up.
No thanks to President Obama on that. I mean,
but he's to blame for the rising cost of oil?
Well, let me tell you, 15% of grocery increases, that's what's the problem. The middle class keeps getting squeezed.
Governor Lamb, Governor Romney said on this subject of jobs that his approach is a new one that hasn't been tried before. Do you agree?
It didn't sound either new or particularly creative to me. I mean, we've got ourselves a real problem on jobs. I mean, we've all of a sudden got this whole international competition, and I don't know what can solve that. We've got hundreds of millions of people in other countries that are competing for sort of the jobs that we have, and I think that neither of these candidates have a solution equal to the magnitude of the problem.
Let me share a thought on the governor's approach on that. I served on the Ways and Means Committee, and I have a pretty good idea of how we write tax legislation. With the governor, I'm a CPA, and I worked my way through law school as work filling out tax forms for people, so I understand this. On the Ways and Means Committee and on the Finance Committee, what happens is to pass a bill, they divide it up. You get a couple of amendments, you get a couple, you get a couple, and you get a couple, and you commit to vote for the bill no matter what's in it. And what we've done is made our tax law unbelievably complicated with hundreds and thousands of special amendments and special exemptions and credits and deductions, all from special interest. What he's proposing that is dramatically different is to cut back on all those special interest items and lower the rates, keep the revenue the same, but do away with the special interest games with our tax code. That's new, and that's different than what Congress has done, and it's long overdue for America.
We did it back in 1983.
But useful historian's perspective, I think, that the historians debate, I'll be very brief with this, the historians debate what ended the Depression. Did the New Deal end the Depression? Well, no, because there was a great downturn in 1937. Did World War II end the Depression? Apparently, yes, apparently to that. I am going to tell you the exciting proposition that not a soul I have ever encountered knows how to use government to create jobs in a permanent and lasting way. That seems to be the lesson of the New Deal. It seems to be the lesson now, and for anyone to put themselves in a position of claiming to have mastered this art, that seems an occasion for skepticism for me.
Last question, and a couple of short answers here. Regardless of who is elected, President Obama or Governor Romney, there is a Congress that is at swords points. Just the partisanship is causing, obviously, a gridlock. Do you see that will change after this election? And each of you give me a short answer. You can give me yes or no if you'd like.
I will pray. That's what I'll do. Is I'll pray. That's what I'm going to do. That's I'm on it. I'm doing it right now, I guess.
Well, okay, when Planned Parenthood's nationwide support is 64% and Congress nationwide support is 10%, if I were in Congress, I would think I had to do something.
Jane?
And I love it that we talk about Planned Parenthood when women are so concerned about the economy right now. That's the number one issue. There is research. Women can have strongly held beliefs, but right now it's the issue of the economy.
And how about the Congress?
Yeah, I think that there's been some demonstrated times that Governor Romney has reached across the aisle, and I hope that it won't be so paralyzing.
Senator Brown, Washington is a different place than when you were there, wouldn't you say? Do you see
no,
this?
unfortunately, the same human nature that was there then is still there now. I do think if Governor Romney is elected president, you will see the end of gridlock and a willingness to work with others. President Obama, when he was in the Senate, was the most liberal of all 100 senators. When Goldwater ran for president, he was the fourth most conservative, and people labeled him an extremist. It's tough to be number one, to be left of Teddy Kennedy and Barbara Boxer. I think what the president is a true believer in his ideas, and he simply doesn't have it in him to make compromises. That can be admired or sad, but it is the reason you've had gridlock.
Last thought, Dick Lamb.
It seems to me the Republican Party has lurched so far to the right that I don't think that Governor Romney could even run the Republican Party, let alone reach out to the Democratic Party.
All right, thank you all so much. That is Colorado State of Mind for this first week in October, and it has been a great privilege to watch the first presidential debate tonight with an audience here at the History Colorado Center and with the five of you. This has been great. Thank you very much to Governor Dick Lamb, Senator Hank Brown, Lieutenant Governor Jane Norton, and Lieutenant Governor Gail Shetler, and also historian Patricia Limerick. Very nice to have all of you here with us tonight, and you can see this conversation again if you go to video.rmpbs.org. Next week on Colorado State of Mind, we continue our series with the candidates who want to go to Congress for Colorado. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Cynthia Hessen.